Welcome now to the Financial Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray. Hello to you, James. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good to have you here. So, James, first of all, we've all been seeing these dramatic pictures of tens of thousands of migrants who are swimming and crossing into the Spanish African island territory of Ceuta. And the Prime Minister earlier on offered British help to Spain with all of that. Do tell us, what sort of help is on offer?
Yeah, well, you're right to say that the Prime Minister's spoken to the Spanish government, and offered what help we can. I think it's worth saying that, looking at these pictures that we're seeing, it's not like anything certainly I've ever seen before. I don't think any of us have seen this before, and it really drives home, what an international issue migration is, how important it is that we work, with countries together to get a grip on it, and it underlines the importance for me of making sure that we continue to work with France to tackle the small boat crossings coming into the UK. But the pictures we're seeing of what's happening down there really concerning. Unlike anything I've ever seen before, and absolutely right that the Prime Minister is in touch with Spain and offering whatever support we can.
And what sort of support would that be?
Well, that'll be for the discussions between the Prime Minister and the Spanish government to have to see what support they need. But we want to make sure we're working, with countries across Europe, because this is an international issue. This is not something that any one country can deal with on its own. And I think this really underlines that fact.
OK. And meanwhile, the numbers of those crossing the English Channel to this country has spiked upwards in recent days. How concerned are you, and should we be, about that? We have been hearing, hadn't we, that the government, the ministers were feeling that the action to tackle trafficking gangs was bearing fruit.
Well, I think it's right to say that the action taken over the last couple of years is bearing fruit, with about 46,000 fewer small boat crossings over the last 2 years, with there being a reduction in terms of those small boat crossings. But there's a lot more to do. We've got a lot more work to do on this front. And I don't think any of us underestimate the scale of the problem. I think it's one of these issues where there isn't a single lever you can pull. There isn't a silver bullet. It's not something you can make go away quickly, but it is something we're making progress on, and we need to continue along that front.
But are you concerned with the level of cooperation that we're getting, after offering a good deal of money for this cooperation from the French authorities? We're getting mixed reports, aren't we, about the level of commitment and action taken by French officers?
Well, as I said, we've intercepted a lot of small boat crossings through working with the French, and I don't think there's any way that we can tackle this problem without working with the French authorities. This is an issue right there in the Channel. We've got to be working with the French authorities to tackle this. I think one important thing for me is that the deal that we've got with the French now is payment by results. So it's linked to the results of the joint working. That's important as a part of the way the deal is structured. But it does underline the fact that this is not easy. This is something where you've got to work internationally, but it is something we need to do to regain that trust in the system, to regain trust in our system of controlling our borders, because it's only by having that control over our borders that we can have the compassionate immigration and asylum system that we need.
All right, let's talk a bit about devolution. Can you tell us that Andy Burnham's plan to devolve power, including fiscal power, to elected mayors, is that going to be transformative change? And if it is, how?
Yeah, it's a really exciting day for how we do government in this country and how we put power out of Westminster and right across the country to bring it much closer to people's lives. Because, for so long, I think people have said Westminster politics, isn't delivering everything they want. It isn't giving them what they need. And Andy came in with a very clear determination to push power out of Westminster and get it closer to people's lives. And that's exactly what today's announcement sets out, by giving those real powers to local mayors, by devolving fiscal powers, so tax powers, for the first time on this scale. It's the biggest pushing out of power in a generation. And I think it could be transformative. You think about the decisions which local mayors can take about investing in transport, in jobs, in training, in housing, in all the things that people need to make their lives better. That power is now going closer to where people's lives are. And it means that we have a chance of having growth in every postcode right across the country and making sure people across Britain are better off.
Well, you're telling the mayors that they will be now receiving tax revenue gathered in their own areas. But for every pound that they receive, as it were, in tax revenue, they will sacrifice a pound of government grants. So that will be a neutral effect until the economy starts growing and they can start raking in more tax revenue. That will be a very slow business. In the meantime, though, they can borrow money against those future revenues. So are you telling these mayors, get borrowing?
Well, the borrowing rules which apply are the same borrowing rules which we operate under now, but at the moment, the difficulty is that money is given to mayors as grants. They don't have the same control over much of their income as they would need to invest over the long term. By giving mayors that certainty, that long-term stability of income, by giving a proportion of income tax, by increasing business rates retention and giving business rates retention to mayors, that helps them to take really ambitious decisions for their local areas. And I think it's important to say this is fiscally neutral, but in terms of the amount of money, this is not about changing taxes. This is not about spending more. This is about spending in a different way by giving it to mayors to take those decisions about spending closer to the people who they represent. And that's where the real benefit comes from. And if I can just come back to your earlier point, because you talked about growth and you talked about the real importance of driving growth to make sure that we've got more resources in our country to make people better off. We know that by giving extra powers and resources to mayors, they are in the best position to drive that economic growth. And they can help to make sure we have growth in every postcode across the country.
Right, now, why no freedom for tax rebates, which is something that has been sought by some of your opponents?
Well, look, I've heard some of the mayors talk about this, and I would just say this, which is that if they are going to propose that, if they're going to propose to cut investment in their local areas, they're entitled to propose that, but they have to answer for that to the people within their local area. They'll be held accountable for those decisions. So if they're deciding they want to cut investment in local transport, they want to reduce bus services, they want to have fewer opportunities for young people, they have to explain to their local people, why people are waiting longer for a bus, why they can't get a training opportunity, because that's a difference that will happen if they go down that route.
Okay, now, James, the confusion may be on my part. I was listening to your colleague, the First Secretary, Louise Haigh, earlier on today, who seemed to be saying there would be no freedom to offer tax rebates of the kind that your opponents, some of them, are asking for. You seem to be saying that there will be such a freedom, but they'll have to answer to their electorates on the outcome of all of that. Who is right? Will there be freedom for tax rebates, or will there not?
Well, no, what Louise was saying earlier this morning is that obviously we'll listen to any proposals that come forward, but that if mayors are coming forward with proposals to cut investment, that has consequences. That has consequences for the people that they represent. They will have to answer to people in their local area. So we'll obviously listen to any proposals that come forward, and that's what Louise said this morning.
I took her to be saying the plan did not include that fiscal freedom.
Well, there is no mechanism. I mean, HMRC is not being devolved, as it were. There's no mechanism for that at the moment. But as Louise said, we'll listen to any proposals that come forward. But I think the critical point for me here is that if mayors are proposing that, they will have to answer about why they're cutting investment, because when I listen to people across the country, people want better bus services, they want more opportunities for young people, they want better housing in the local area, they want people to feel better off in the local areas, they want high streets to be doing better. That is the kind of thing that mayors can invest in and take decisions over. And I would say to all mayors, this is a great opportunity to shape the destiny of your local area, to shape the fortunes of your local area by taking a grip of these extra powers and responsibilities that we're devolving, investing in the right way for the people you represent, and boosting that growth and making sure that people in your local area get what they want.
Well, quick one, last one. On football, I ask you this because I know you're a football fan. You've been engaged in your local team in the past. You might have heard the Prime Minister saying earlier on.
I think maybe calling me a football fan is a slight overreach. I think I'm really supportive of Hanwell Town Football Club as local, but I'm not a massive football fan. So you might be getting to the limit of my knowledge on this.
Well, no, I'm not going to ask you to predict the top four for the next coming season. But the Prime Minister...
That's a relief then.
Do not worry. The Prime Minister, though, he said that Gianni Infantino was no longer the right man to lead FIFA now that his plan to sell off the World Cup was floundering. Do you agree with him on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look how badly it's gone down. I think it's really good that the FA here and across all home nations and across Europe, in fact, and other parts of the world have said they don't think this plan should go ahead. Yeah. I think the fact that he suggested it indicates he's out of touch and he doesn't see
out of touch. And you say absolutely. What is it that particularly offended you about this Infantino plan?
Well, I think I know how much football means to so many people, and I know how much people feel that football should be for fans rather than for profit. And there's a really strong feeling that in too many cases, football has been driven by profit rather than being for fans. And I think this is such a stark example of that, of a proposal coming forward which just seems to go for profit rather than making football for the fans. And I know how people who live around me will feel about it, and I'm very glad that there's quite a strong message coming out. This is not a route any of us want to go down.
All right, strong stuff, James. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Now,
thanks very much.
I want to bring you this piece of breaking news. Italy has now confirmed it's suspending the EU's border-free Schengen arrangements with Spain after the mass movement of migrants into the Spanish enclave of Ceuta from nearby Morocco. Italy does not have a land border with Spain, but the measure would impact people travelling by plane or boat between those two countries. Italy's Interior Ministry has said in a statement it had also agreed with Paris to strengthen controls along the Franco-Italian border too. A piece of breaking news for you just in the last few moments. Now, it is now 5:27. Keen to hear what you are thinking on all of the stories that we're covering on the show today. Send me a text, send me a tweet. As we stand, the former funeral director responsible for failing to bury and cremate dozens of people in Hull has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. Mr Justice Hilliard said Robert Bush was heartless and had a disregard for the deceased. And earlier today, Andy Burnham was asked if he backed calls for funeral regulation. Let's get the thoughts now of Terry Tellens, the Chief Executive of the National Society of Allied and Independent Funeral Directors. Thank you for joining us, Terry.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you, John.
Terry, you share your feelings and your thoughts now. This awful case, it has caused, hasn't it, a crisis of confidence, if that's not overstating it, in the funeral director's business.
It has. And,